can I welcome everybody to our meeting, and particular welcome to Jen Rayner, our Cabinet Member for Education, and of course Helen Morgan-Rees, the Interim Director. So welcome, and also welcome to John Lee, the Chair of Governors from WAUN, and I say Lynwen, the Deputy Chair of Governors, and I can't see Catherine Nicklin on my screen, but yes, she is. Yes, she is. So welcome, Catherine, as well, the head of the school, and so we'll can introduce everybody during the course of the meeting. Next, are there any apologies?
I've had apologies from Stephen Gallagher, and Mike Day said he may have to give his apologies. He's not here yet, but he may come yet. If not, he'll be giving his apologies. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Are there any disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests?
Yes, can I just say I have a son working for the authority again, as normal, Michelle?
Yeah, okay.
Great, fine. Are there any others? Okay, great, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the prohibition of whip votes and declaration of party whips. So that's self-explanatory. And the next item is letters and minutes. I sent a letter out via Helen, and that was going out to schools and to thank the staff right across the authority in education for the work that they've been doing, because they've really, and governors, the work that they've been doing is above the call of duty. It really has been excellent. So that's gone out in minutes. So any comments about those? Okay. The next item in the agenda is public questions. Are there any public questions, Michelle?
We have no public questions, but I'll need to do a quick roll call if that's okay.
Okay, fine. Can we do that? How do you want to do that?
If I just call out, and if you just say yes, and then we can introduce the people here as well.
Okay.
If I've got Cyril, Mike Day, Mike Dirk, David Halliwell,
Present.
Beverly Hopkins,
Present.
Linda James,
Present.
Sue Jones,
Present.
Miles Langstone,
Present.
Councillor Linda Tyler-Lloyd, Linda Tyler-Lloyd, yeah, I can see you there at the bottom, and Alexandra Roberts.
Present.
Dave Anderson-Thomas, I don't think he's online, is he? No. We also have Catherine Nicklin, the head teacher, I believe is on, yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
John Lee, who is the Chair of Governors at WAUN Primary,
Yes,
and Lynwen Barnsley, who is Chair of Governors, Vice Chair of Governors at WAUN.
Yeah, I'm here.
Jen Rayner, Cabinet Member. Yeah, I can see you there. Helen Morgan-Rees.
Hello, present.
Director. Lovely. Kate Phillips, who's the Head of School Support, Achievement and Partnership. Yes. And we've also got Mary Jones, who's here for the second item mainly.
Yeah.
I think that's everyone. There we are. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And the next item on the agenda is a presentation from the school. I think I'm told that Catherine, you're going to do the presentation, and then obviously John and Lynwen coming in as well.
Yes, that's right.
Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Great. Now, obviously, we set some questions, but I've asked some questions. But if we could possibly, obviously, when you do your presentation, a lot of these might come up in the presentation. But possibly, we'll have a few questions at the end, and I'm sure we will. Do you want to take questions on the way through, or do you want to wait and we take questions at the end?
I've got slides and a PowerPoint to show, so if people want to ask questions as we go through, that's fine. I'm quite happy to sort of pause at the end of each slide and see if anybody's got any questions.
Okay, great. It's fine then. We'll do that. Thank you. Would you
I'll
like
share the screen with the slides now.
Okay. Could you put your hands up? Use the hand up facility then for questions, unless for some reason that doesn't work.
I think, can everyone see their see the slides?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Catherine, the screen is all yours.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you ever so much for inviting us to join you today and talk about wellbeing. It's something really close to my heart. I'm going to give you a bit of a background, if you can bear with me, to my school, just so that you can see hopefully where we're coming from today. I'll try not to ramble on too long, I promise, and keep it going. It's quite interesting because I just feel that well-being is something, it's a phrase or a word that we hear so much all the time, and yet for me it seems to mean different things to different people, particularly at different times in life. And at the moment, you know, your well-being can be great for a bit at the moment, and then it can change within an hour. Certainly within the school day at the moment, things seem to go up and down like roller coasters. So it's just basically the way that we look at it in YSGOL. But I do feel that it's important to say that it's not a one size fits all, that every school is very unique and has its own set of challenges to face, and our challenges are the ones that we face in YSGOL. I don't know if you know YSGOL, we're not far from Davati Lights. We're a city school. It was built in 1875 on quite a steep hill. We do puff when we get to the top of it after you've been from bottom to top. It does help my fitness though. There's 4 flights of stairs, which I go up and down frequently during the day. Not designed with the foundation phase or COVID in mind, definitely. But it's a happy little place, and we've also got a flying start facility in our school as well, which we're very proud of, and we see as our first step for education with children as well. So could you go to the next slide, Michelle, please?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. So I just put some data together. I noticed on the agenda that there was data from January 2019, but I work these out on the 3rd of November this year because our data sort of changes quite frequently. So you can see our free school meals is currently at 57%, which is higher than it's ever been in the school, and it's gone up substantially since March, understandably, I think, as well. Can we stay on the other one a second? Sorry, Michelle. We've got also second languages in our school. So there's 47% of our children are English additional languages. We've got 27 home languages. Not one of them, interestingly, is Welsh. So, and I have to say, there's a couple of times some of the languages are really I'd never heard of before I got to the school and had to Google to find out where they came from. But it adds to a wonderful diversity within the school and a wonderful mix of cultures as well. And it just makes it a joy to be there. Of those 47% EAL children, 73% are at stages A and B. So that means that they're either new to English or they're in early acquisition. So that's quite a challenge in itself. And we've also got 42% of additional learning needs with 5 statements. And we've currently as well got 5 children on the Child Protection Register. So there's quite a mix in our school. It's still a very, very happy place. It's full of energy. And we just have the most beautiful children as well, who are a joy to be around every day. But each one of those statistics there is a challenge in itself. And then we put them all together. I sometimes call it the perfect storm when I talk to the staff about it. But it also means that we've got a significant number of children in our school who are vulnerable in one way or another. The next slide, sorry, Michelle. So I put in some data from WIMD, the Welsh Index for Mass Deprivation. This came from January 2019, and I just thought it's really interesting because it gives you a picture. You can see quite clearly that 93% of our children live in the bottom 2 deciles for deprivation. So that's, you know, that's a massive number of children. It's quite often when I sit in meetings with people, they're not actually aware that, because they think it's Swansea city centre or it's near the city centre, then actually it's not that deprived, but it is. There's a huge amount of poverty that we deal with regularly in the school. We've also got something quite interesting. We've got quite a transient population. It's a bit like a revolving door sometimes. Where there's a lot of temporary housing in the catchment area. So children come and they stay with us for a short time and then they go. So last year, between September and March, 14 children joined the school, 13 left. So on paper, we look like stable number of children, but actually they weren't the same children that had started in September. And that makes it quite difficult to sort of plan or set targets, particularly for cohorts or classes of children, because very often they're not the same children there at the end of the year that were at the beginning. Currently in year 6, we've got 9 children out of 22 who started in our nursery. So that's why one of the things that we do in YSGOL is we very, very much look at each individual child, track their progress as they go for however long they're with us, which varies. We had one child came in September and 2 days later moved to another school, so we didn't get very far there, unfortunately. This week we've had 1 admission. I've got another two children due within the next week or so, and we had 2 children leave a couple of weeks ago as well. So it's this constant revolving door, but to be honest, it adds to the fun and it adds to the diversity in the school anyway. If we look at poverty now, I'm just going to talk about poverty. You've seen that we've got there 93% of the children are in the bottom 2 deciles. Poverty has a massive impact on well-being and success for the future for these children, and research has shown that children being born into poverty, they're more likely to experience a wide range of health problems. They might have poor nutrition, chronic disease, mental health problems, added to the fact that it puts additional strain on families, and that can lead to parental mental health, relationship problems, financial problems. So there's lasting effects with poverty. And I put the next slide in just to show you something that I found quite fascinating when I went to an HERIAU presentation just before the summer holidays. So if you could show the next slide, Michelle. Thank you. So I borrowed this from HERIAU. I pinched it from the HERIAU presentation. It's a presentation to do with raising attainment in disadvantaged youngsters, and it was aimed at secondary, but it was so interesting. The head teacher of our cluster had been talking about it. I just thought I'd throw my hat in and sit through it anyway. It was a fascinating experience. But you can see there quite clearly the impact of poverty. So in the blue little section, it means that the one person at the top, the little person in blue at the top, is the 1 out of 20 children. So if they went to an independent school, one of those children would attend Oxford or Cambridge. If the yellow numbers there is that 1 child from a state school, but that's not free school meals. So 1 out of 196 children would attend Oxford or Cambridge. So that's quite a significant difference there. And then you look at this whopping difference for free school meals children, and it's 1 child in every 1,984 children. And to me, it was startling, and it just shows that the disadvantage that they're starting off, and we talk about closing the gap, but it's something that we need to start planning, right from the beginning. So it's a challenge that we face in YSGOL. Is one of our challenges is certainly poverty. I don't know if anybody's got any questions so far, or if you want me to just rattle on.
Any questions? And if you'd like to put your hands up, and I'll know who you. No, by the look of it. But if I could say, the panel have been very concerned about the attainment of people on free school meals, and we've asked to be, kept informed throughout the year about attainment, because it is something that we really need to alter. And looking at that graph there, it just says it all, doesn't it, really? And those are people we really need to help.
Yeah.
Absolutely need to help. So thanks for sharing that with us.
Okay, well, and in fairness, that was an HERIAU presentation, and there's a lot going on to try and close this gap, and make a difference to these children. So that was poverty is one side, and then this is the next thing that I was going to ask you to think about that we face in our school as well, and these are adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs as they're referred to. So we all know life can't be stress-free. A little bit of stress is good for us. It's something that you learn from. We need to develop resilience, and children have to develop resilience as well to be able to be stable adults to go out into life. So when we are faced with a threat or something stressful, it means that your heart rate increases, your blood pressure increases, and your stress hormones pumping around the body increase as well. So when this happens to a child, if they're living in a home that's supportive and they're supported by adults, then they're buffered. These stress responses are buffered by the adults and the adult support and the relationships that are in the home. If a child is living with these stress factors all the time, or they're ongoing, then it's quite often that the buffering isn't helping, and what can happen then is that there is damage to the neurological systems in the child, and these can affect the child's development and affect their health and in fact affect their learning as well when it comes to school. So looking at adverse childhood experiences is something that we've sort of been, it's been brought to the forefront in our school over several children over a few years. But I actually sat a couple of days ago and thought, right, I'll just run through the registers quickly and tot up roughly how many children I think have faced some of these experiences. And we've definitely got, that I know of, 35% of our children have suffered one or more of the ACEs. I've got 9 children that have suffered 4 or more. So that's quite a significant number of children who have lived through quite significant experiences, and research shows that this trauma that their brain has suffered from and the after effects of it can be long lasting. They'll affect the way the child reacts to the world, the way they're going to learn, the way they're going to succeed academically. So it's another reason that we've had in our minds, we've got the poverty, but we've also got the adverse childhood experiences as well that we're really concerned about. So going back to our school, we sort of looked at our school then, looked at our data, because data is wonderful for helping sometimes, although I do feel that children don't fit into little boxes, and we have to be very careful that we don't try and fit them into a box deliberately. So we looked at our school and we looked at our language ability, the baseline scores for our school, and they were very low. And one of my early years classes has got 87% of the children on entry were below their average for their language skills. And in fact, 83% of them were over 1 year delayed, and 57% were 2 to 3 years delayed. And that's coming into school on entry. So we were sort of, it's not just EAL children, I must say as well here. This is overall. So there's a big problem that we were facing with the language acquisition and the language ability of our children. If they can't express themselves, if they're not understanding us in class properly, if their emotions aren't in the right place, then they're not going to learn. So we had a big focus on speech and language needs. And I have to say that I am exceptionally lucky because I have a teaching assistant who's actually a qualified and experienced speech and language therapist. And she's phenomenal in her knowledge of what she's talking about, because it's not things I've been taught myself. But the next couple of slides, I'm not going to read through all of them. I'll put them up and just basically say to you, you know, if you look at those slides, you can see once again, so we're talking about poverty, but now we're talking about children with speech and language and communication needs. Again, they are not achieving anywhere near as children who have good language skills, and that's been a problem for us as well, that we needed to address that issue and see how we could improve that. So that's one of the slides. The next slide relates the speech and language communication needs to emotional health of children. So you can see 81% of children with emotional and behavioural disorders have an unidentified speech and language communication need. That's massive, you know, but you can understand if you can't communicate, you're going to become frustrated and you're going to be upset and you're not going to function properly. And my Elenco actually has been on some trauma training in the last week, and she said to me today, just before I left the school, she said one of the things they told us that 1 in 5 children in primary schools have a mental health issue at the moment, and that's massive. That's absolutely massive, and it's something that we all need to be thinking about as well. And I don't know, COVID has exacerbated an awful lot of things that are going on, no doubt. I'll come to COVID in a second, but there's another interesting slide as well here that I thought I'd show you, which will tell you about the lifelong impact of these children. So 60% of young offenders have low language skills, and I know, and this is going to have an impact on society as well. But my TA also told me that in some of the United States in America, they screen the children on entry for their vocabulary and language acquisition, and they actually plan their prison places according to the scores of those children at 5. That's how they know the impact of these children is going on, which it's planning ahead, I suppose, but to me it says, well, what can I do in the meantime? That's a long time to get them there. So that gives you a background really as to where we are coming from in YWN. We've got big speech and language issues, not just because of EAL, the challenges of poverty as well. So that sort of summarises us. So I don't know if you've got any questions so far or anything.
Are there any questions from anyone? No, not at the moment. Oh yes, Beverly Hopkins, Councillor Beverly Hopkins.
Hi, thank you very much. It was a very interesting presentation. When you discussed how many different children you've got with different nationalities there, and languages, have you got any staff that work in the school that have any bilingual things themselves, where they can, you know, where we used to use the EMA support group in the past. I'm just wondering if you could have any of your staff there that are bilingual and can help the children.
I have bilingual, we bring in bilingual staff from agencies at the moment. We used to have the EMO support, and I've got to say the EMO support was absolutely superb. And the skill set of the staff from the EMO department with the bilingual teaching assistants was second to none. It really was. They were absolutely brilliant, and they were able to work with children with second languages, not just with the language that they were their first language, but with all children as well. They were really highly trained. I miss those. We do still have some in the school. I do have a bilingual teaching assistant, although she wasn't trained through the local authority. She's somebody that we've taken on ourselves. But yeah, it is something, because we couldn't have enough assistants for 27 languages anyway. There's no way. But do you know what? If a child starts in a school, isn't it important to have somebody who can actually talk to them and they can talk to as well? So yeah, it's a really big issue. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
That's okay.
Great, thank you. Al as well, Al Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you very much indeed for this presentation. I was very interested in the presentation as a whole, and also in some of the information that I was able to glean from the website at your end. I just have to mention that you've got a number of broken links on your website and a lot of pages missing. So in terms of trying to dig into that detail, it was a little bit difficult, but very informative nonetheless. One of the things I was very interested to learn about was your Empathy Lab project, and whether or not you could talk about that. That sounds like a fantastic initiative. And the impact of the PDG grant funding to meditation lessons, how that's going. That sounds amazing. So perhaps you'd like to talk to those points, please.
Yeah, I'm coming on to, they're on the slides, I promise.
Oh, I thought you'd ended. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
Oh no, right. I've only just got going here. This is
right. Yeah. Okay, great.
Here for a while. So I was, it's just you know, basic. This is challenge before COVID as well. Just baseline scores, lack of vocabulary, and difficulty expressing themselves. The children who've suffered trauma, and we've got quite a high involvement of social services. All of these challenges that we're facing, can I just say, we're not the only school that faces them by a long way. You know, I know we're talking about me today, but I know I've got colleagues who face very, very similar situations on a daily basis. So we were just, one of our priorities has been then to get the children ready to learn. We felt that's where we had to start. So could you go on to the next slide, Michelle, please? So this is how we got there. An Empathy Lab is coming up now because it was a wonderful time in there. So we decided to look at actually how children learn with their vocabulary, how vocabulary is acquired. And we did some training on it, and there's different tiers of vocabulary. There's tier 1, which would be taught at home, and is things like head, chair, table, the basic vocabulary. You've got tier 2, which is more of your embellished vocabulary, and then you've got tier 3, which is the technical vocabulary, which is what we're very, very good at in schools at teaching, because that's what we do. We teach technical vocabulary. So we decided, looking at our children and looking at what was going on in our school, that we actually now introduce lessons and different topics with a vocabulary lesson. So we give the children, we teach them the vocabulary with a word bank before we actually go on to the topic itself, so that they know where we're coming from with it. One of the other things then we sort of tried to address with the trauma, we were involved in a GYNRADD project, which was to do with Barnardo's, and it ran where some 2 counsellors or therapists came into school to work with some children every week for about a year, and they were amazing at upskilling us in our knowledge of how to work with children and of explaining behaviours. If you are interested in children with trauma and understanding how things happen and the neurology of the brain, then the one of the therapists said to me to read The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, which is a book by Dr. Bruce Perry. He's an American psychologist, and it's possibly one of the most harrowing reads I've ever read. I wouldn't recommend you read it if you're not in a good place emotionally yourself, because it's quite harrowing. However, it also explains how the wiring of the brain affects a child's behaviour and affects the way they relate to the world and everything else. So that was one of the things. I could only do a chapter at a time on that, sometimes half a chapter, but as I was reading it, there were children sort of stepping off the page, and I was recognising children and behaviours that were there in front of us. So that was one of the things. And then the third one was the Empathy Lab. So Empathy Lab is a project that we became involved with through our cluster. And the timing of it was perfect, actually, for us, because we were looking at vocabulary and we were looking at expression and expressive language. The Empathy Lab, what they've shown with research through Empathy Lab is that it's children learn to be empathetic far more effectively through stories and good quality books than they do in any other way. So it linked in brilliantly with us. It's something we've done as a cluster, and we're all very, very proud of it. And it's enabled us. We have empathy lessons. We use the vocabulary with the children. We link books to different topics. The books that we get a list. We've had a list of books from Empathy Lab. They are absolutely superb quality, and they enable us to look at the children and to look at social action as well. Although a lot of it had to stop because of COVID, obviously. But that Empathy Lab has allowed us to really start developing the children's vocabulary and developing and expressing their feelings as well. Another way that we've done it is the next slide. So we started with The Colour Monster, which is a lovely book. We actually saw it in another school in Swansea. It wasn't my idea. I pinched it from somebody else, and we YSGOL it, as you do. And we introduced the Colour Monster through an assembly, and the Colour Monster has different feelings and different colours to go with the feelings. So all the children in the school know the story of the Colour Monster, and they're able to relate to the feelings. They've all got these jars in their classrooms, so when they come in the morning, they're able to put their photo in the jar of where they are. We were doing check-ins. We've always done check-ins. We were doing check-ins before, but we sort of sat down and said, well, why are we doing the check-in? What's the purpose of it? Is it actually, are we really asking the children how they feel, or are we covering a Welsh activity or something? And I didn't think it was doing any, you know, it was particularly good for Welsh teaching, or particularly good for the children's well-being either. So they're all taught about the jars and the colours, and they can tell you all about them as well. Nursery they haven't got the 6 jars, they've just got 3 or 4 to start with while they get used to it. And they come in the morning and they put their face in the jar. If they're in the sad or the angry jar, or it's a negative sort of feeling, then the teacher or the TA will actually just approach them and say, you know, you okay? What's the matter? And have a chat and whatever, and they talk about it. It's lovely to see as well that their picture moves from jar to jar through the day. So we're tapping into the fact now that they're actually recognising that their feelings change, and it could be they've fallen over in the yard, therefore they're feeling sad, so they come in and they put their jar in, their face in the sad jar. We sort of stepped it then one step further. If you could go on to the next one, please. So we took it one step further by then trying to use the tier 2 vocabulary now, to use different words instead of just sad or angry, to use different words. So they work with the children when they're coming across words in books and stories and other things, and they think of different ways. So we're looking at synonyms basically, and you can see in the middle jar there that it's the angry jar. So somebody said cross, somebody said aggressive. My favourite is tamping, that one of the children said, I'm absolutely tamping about that. So that was but it comes from the children. It's very much their choice, and they are finding it, and they're investigating these words and using the vocabulary themselves. And what was absolutely wonderful was last year I had a year 1 child was talking to me about his feelings, and he said that because I'm dressed. So I said, all right, again. He said, yeah, and then he gave me another couple of words, and then he said, Welsh is the language that we talk all the time, isn't it? And English is the one that we're learning. And I said, well, in this school, it's the other way round. I said, we speak English all the time and Welsh is the one we're learning. But I said, it doesn't matter really, as long as you're learning all the languages, I'm really proud of you anyway. So it's lovely as well that we do interlink the Welsh with it as well. But it's very much trying to expand the vocabulary and for the children to recognise their emotions. So when before lockdown, we were looking at this, we had English classes for our second language parents, which I know other schools run as well, really successfully. We had, we'd organised literacy classes. We found that a lot of our parents are just not confident and in supporting their children, and it's quite intimidating actually. You know, it's quite easy when you're a teacher, you take it for granted that parents know what to do with their children, and actually sometimes they don't, and especially if they've had a negative experience in school themselves, it can be quite threatening, especially some of the homework we sent home. So we set up as well cookery classes that we were going to do for our parents to learn how to cook healthy meals on a budget, because, you know, the way things are, that all sort of stopped then because of lockdown. Before, we'd also introduced library times with our parents. So all our foundation phase classes, we invite the parents in once a week. They choose a library book with their child, they sit and look at the story, they talk together, and then right at the end, the teacher gathers them together and they all sit together and the teacher reads a book. So the teacher's modelling then how to read, how to question the children and just enjoy stories because it's so important, and do some rhymes as well. So that was really well received. We've had online training with our parents, because obviously the internet is something that's everywhere, but it's the policing of it and keeping it safe. And to be honest, half the children are ahead of me half the time with what's going on with the internet, because they pick things up so quickly. I've got to say about my chair of governors at this moment in time that he's kept an allotment for our children, and he was taking them over every week for gardening. Different groups of children, and the excitement when Mr. Lee walks into the room is quite something to behold, because they all want to go with him all the time, and it's an absolute joy to see. So you know, a hugely committed chair of governors that I have, without a doubt, who knows our children. We've run support groups for our autistic spectrum children on the autistic spectrum whose families have got anxieties. But one of what loveliest things as well was we were visiting the nursing home that's next door to our school, and the children had friends. A lot of our children, because they haven't got extended family near them, it was a lovely opportunity for them to go and mix with another generation, and they shared a story together or they did craft together, and that was absolutely magical as well. But unfortunately then lockdown appeared, COVID, and so much has stopped.
Hello. Could everybody who is not actually taking part to mute themselves? Michelle, could you mute everybody except you know, Catherine, who's speaking?
Was
right. Yeah, Michelle, can you mute everyone?
The magazines that I have at the bound went, but the ones that are unbound haven't generally. And yet people tell me to do it.
Yeah, Michelle, is it possible for you to mute everyone?
technology become a novel thing?
No. I'm sorry, I don't want to rush you, but I'm on an online meeting at the moment.
Oh, I see, sorry. Sorry. Is it all one?
Yes, all
right.
one. Yes.
If I place them outside the front door, then you don't have to attend.
Okay.
How about that?
That'd be fine.
Okay.
If you're not sure how to do it, I think you can just click on participants and it'll open up a drawer on the right hand side. You can mute all and then unmute one particular person. Michelle, I think, as host.
Okay.
Are you okay there? That's okay. Catherine, are you?
Yeah, am I? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, great. We were getting a bit of background noise in there. I think somebody was at the door.
I know.
House. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so just going back then to lockdown, and I think everybody's well-being took a nosedive when lockdown arrived. Mine certainly did. And one of the things that we were determined about when we went into lockdown was that our families were going to know that we were still there. Although the school closed, we felt it was really, really important that they knew we hadn't gone away. We knew we needed them to see us and to make sure that they knew that the staff were there and we were still there to support them if they needed it. So we did telephone in every week and every fortnight, certainly to every family, but every week to some families. Do you know, one of the most wonderful parts of that was I'd phone up, or whoever it was would be phoning, and the families would always ask how we were, how our staff were we well, were we safe? And they needed to know that everybody, and I'd say, yes, the staff are fine, we're all fine, everything's safe. But it was lovely that they were worried about us as well as us sort of worrying about them. We delivered the free school meals, so we had 92 bags every Monday to deliver. Now, we could easily have asked the local authority. The offer was there from the local authority to deliver the bags for us. There was never an issue with that. We had the complete support, but we decided to do it ourselves because we wanted to see our children and we wanted to see our families and we wanted them to see us. So it was a way of keeping them, of knowing that we were still there as well. It was quite a military operation, to be honest, to get all the bags out, and to planning the route was bad enough for 92 bags to do. That took some doing, but it was wonderful. And within a week or two, the children would know roughly what time the staff were going to arrive, and they'd be waiting for them. And they were quite often waiting with their work to show them as well and things like that. So we were able to have a conversation, albeit from a distance, but we were able to see and talk to these children. We then, you can see the picture there, we set up a food bank in our staff room. I mean, when we went into lockdown, I don't think any of us were prepared for what was coming in any way, shape or form, because none of us have ever been through it before and none of us knew how to handle it to start. And it was all a bit, the first couple of weeks, we were all a bit new to it. But we found that a lot of our families had reduced, their hours had been reduced in work quite dramatically, but they weren't on benefits. So there was no safety net for them, and we were delivering food parcels to them as well as delivering the free school meals. There's some wonderful people out there in our world, in Swansea, and we had masses donated by Morrison's and the Red Cafe. They donated so much food to us. We had vouchers from Aldi's and Tesco's, and that allowed us to go and buy food as well to bring in and keep in the staff room, and then we dish it out. And there were also members of my deputy head's family go to St Tyler's Church in Bishopston, and they donated money, which we used to spend and buy for the food bank that we kept in school. And then we were making sure that our families had food. We managed to win 100 Easter eggs as well, which was great. And I can honestly say, when we won the Easter eggs, I genuinely thought we would be back in school to have some sort of Easter celebration, not before Easter, but afterwards. And I thought, oh yeah, we'll all be back. We'll have a special Easter day. We had more eggs donated from Morrison's and the Red Cafe again. So every child had an Easter egg. And as time was ticking on, it became obvious that actually we weren't going to get back to school for these children to have their Easter celebration. And eventually we realised that the eggs were going to go out of date if we didn't get them out to the children. So we delivered them, but we actually had to, it was at that point that we realised there was a couple of times we tried to deliver to houses where there were armed police incidences going on and staff couldn't get, and that really hit home with us, that our children are living and seeing that sort of thing quite regularly. And that was, some of the staff who've worked there for years in the school said, I hadn't realised. I thought I knew it with what they'd said, but I hadn't really known it all. So it was really good for us to be seeing where our children really do come from. And we actually, in the end, ended up getting the community police support officer, bless him. He delivered quite a lot of Easter eggs for us. One parent actually said to me he nearly had a heart attack when he saw a policeman knocking on his door. And they opened the door and there was an Easter egg given to him, but he said they did appreciate it. We also delivered Play-Doh, a pot of Play-Doh to every child in our foundation phase, and workbooks. The workbooks were, to all of the children. because we knew that a lot of our children, although the families have got a phone, they haven't got computers, they haven't got laptops, they haven't got the IT that they need to do the online learning then, but they could access the page on the website, the class page. So we deliberately set up activities that was only needed to be done in a workbook or with the Play-Doh. So we deliberately did that to make sure that all our activities are accessible to all of our learners. We loaned out as much as we could of our computer equipment, but obviously there was never going to be enough for every single family in the school. But we worked out that, and the other thing, the issue is that not all of our parents had the computer skills to be able to help the children with it as well. So that's another issue. So by doing it this way, we knew that we could give activities that were accessible to our children and hope that they were doing it then. So then we returned back to school. Before we came back in July, we decided to put a video on Facebook, our Facebook page, the school Facebook page, to show the children what it would be like, because we were concerned about the fact that they might be worried about coming into school, because it looks so different, and it does look different. Every school looks different at the moment. With all the will in the world, you can't make it the same place because we've had to remove so much furniture to go along with the guidance. So we put a video of the teachers washing their hands and demonstrating to the children. And the only issue was with it that apparently we had about 50,000 hits, which doesn't really mean a lot to me because I'm not a Facebooker. But yes, we only meant it for our parents, but they seemed to quite like it. The issue that we then had was that I just said, well, we had brand new toilets built just before through the summer holidays. There were brand new toilets, and we, for some unknown reason, used the old toilets to film the video in when they were washing their hands. It was just one of those things you think afterwards, oh no, why did we do that? But it was really positive for the parents. We're really, really pleased that we did it to show the children what it's going to be like. But as you can see from those photos, it's a very different setting, and it's not just my school. That's every school will be exactly the same, that it's all very, very different. So we were concerned about the children's well-being. If you go on to the next slide, one of the things we'd also noticed as well was the fact that a lot of our children returned to school not as fit, physically fit as they were before, which is understandable. I don't know about you, but when I'm at home, I graze. I eat biscuits and anything I can really lay my hands on all day. The children had been doing that, I think, as well, and they weren't having the opportunities to go out because of the restrictions that we were under. So we built into the new curriculum now they have 15 minutes extra every afternoon. We don't have an afternoon play, and it's not play. I was watching the year 6 teacher actually was doing squats and a bit of circuit training with year 6 out in the yard this afternoon. But it's very, very much sort of, we're trying to get that heart pumping and get some physical, because their physical well-being is just as important. They're young children. We have to look after their physical side of things as well as the emotional. So the physical side of it, we've had new play equipment built in the yard, and they absolutely love it. Although you do have your heart in your mouth sometimes when you're watching some of the things that they do as they're hanging over different ropes and things and doing turns and everything else, but that's what they should be doing, is playing. And we've got the daily mile as well. The one way actually isn't part of the daily mile, that's just the yard system that we've had to put in for COVID, if you can see the thing there. So that's 15 minutes extra every day for them to get their heart pumping. The next slide then goes on to the yoga. So during the summer holidays, I did a little bit more training again on well-being and in the classroom, and we were concerned about the number of children really coming back with anxiety, that there was definitely going to be an increase in anxiety. There's an increase in staff anxiety as well. We're all human. And we also have had quite a few children, you know, if they've suffered trauma, then they find it very difficult to regulate themselves. So if they get upset, it can be quite hard to bring them back down and to get them into the right place and then to expect them to learn. So we decided as well that they're going to have a well-being lesson. They have it every week. at least, and we teach the children the vocabulary as well, and we talk to them about their bodies, and we talk to them about when your body is regulated or dysregulated, and we're teaching them ways they can learn, different ways they can learn to regulate themselves. This is a class doing yoga. They absolutely love it. It's only 5 minutes in the morning when they come in, but they absolutely love doing the yoga or doing a bit of meditation. And one example of where it worked really well was one morning a few weeks ago, I was in the yard and there was one of our boys from Key Stage 2 was throwing his bag. He was hurling his bag onto a wall and a floor and repeating it over and over again, picking up his bag and hurling it again and picking up his bag and throwing it again and throwing it again. And I'm looking at him thinking, right, there's something not right. I don't know what it is. He's not going to be able to tell me about it because I can see just from looking at him, he's not going to be able to do anything. So we're going to put him into class now. What's going to happen? The world's going to fall apart. He's not going to cope. So we took him. We said, come on, come with us. He went with my Elenco. She put some music, some meditation music on, and he said to her, he said, oh, this is meditation music. And she said, oh, yes, it is. Yes, she said, it is. They did a couple of activities with some clay and Play-Doh. It took about half an hour or so. He actually showed her how to sit and listen to the music. And he then started about how he needed to get more oxygen into his body to help him calm. And to be honest, that was, we've only been doing this since September. That was just, I just thought, oh, wow, I'm so proud of this little boy, the fact that he's recognising that now, and hopefully as he goes through life, that's going to be something that he can take with him and he can keep recognising, and it'll keep supporting him. So we were so proud of him. And then after about half an hour, 45 minutes, he went back to class and he accessed the learning for the rest of the day. So he had a really successful day in school. So that's where we're trying to be proactive and trying to look at the whole child and put them in the right place so they can learn. Last couple of slides now I've got is the next one is about our support from our governors. I have the most fabulous support from governors, I have to say. I've got a wonderful board of governors who genuinely care very deeply about the children, about the school, but about the staff as well. I can honestly say that running a COVID safe school is an absolutely massive challenge for any head teacher. My building is not designed for COVID. I don't know if many schools are, in fairness. The restrictions are necessary, of that there is no doubt, and it is difficult. There's no doubt it's difficult. Washing hands is a massive challenge. When you want to wash 189 children's hands, it's difficult, and we've got them, they're all on different timetables, but it is difficult. Especially in an old building like ours, because it's just not designed for children to all be washing their hands at the same time. So it's a bit like catch the drip sometimes with the taps and things like that. The children have adapted so well. They've adapted brilliantly. The staff are superb. I don't know where I'd be without my staff, but things are different, and it's noticeably different because we can't all be together. And I think that's something that all primary schools in particular will notice, that you can't bring them all. You lose almost your sense of family in a way. The highlight of many of the children's week is on a Friday when we do a Teams assembly, and they spend the first 5 minutes just waving to each other and just pointing and looking at each other, because they don't even cross in a corridor anymore. They don't get to see anyone. So our governors, I don't know where I'd be without them. They're hugely supportive in so many ways. I've said about our chair of governors and how much he actually does and how he's in the school in and out. And at this point, I'm going to ask Lynwen if she would like to just say, so instead of listening to me, you can listen to it from the governor's. Go on, Lynwen.
Oh, well, I mean, after listening to that, I think you can probably see that, support from governors isn't really a difficult job. Kath and her staff do such a good job. It's easy for us as governors to support them, and it is difficult at this moment. That I know it's difficult for John. He can't go in. He spends a lot of time with the children. None of us can go in and give the face-to-face support which we're used to doing, but I know that we're always there on the end of a phone, basically. But I mean, what I want to say, I mean, you must have picked up now from this presentation that Kath feels passionate about this vision for her school, that well-being is at the heart of learning for children. And she's always had that. When she came to YWN, she said, you know, this is what I want. And, you know, that's not easy. It's, well, the words are easy, saying, you know, well-being is at the heart of our curriculum, but actually doing it, it's about creating that ethos and involving everyone. And that included us as governors. We had to, you know, we had to learn what this vision was and to learn all about it. And the, you know, Kath and all our staff, they did all the research. They looked at what would work best, as you've heard. You know, they looked at the children, they looked at the needs, they looked at programs that were out there, and, you know, training was arranged for staff. And our communication with the school is very good. We've got very good communication systems. So as governors, we felt always that we were in there. We knew what was going on. We knew why things were being done. And Kath always gives us a, you know, in her head teacher report, tells us about what they're doing. But our curriculum committee meets regularly. So we were able to delve deeper with teachers into what this meant in the classroom, and then did learning walks where we actually went into the classroom. We didn't talk to teachers, we talked to the children, and it's amazing, you know, what the children will tell you, you know, and they knew exactly what they were doing and why they were doing it. You know, it was brilliant, and we could see a consistency right the way through the school in the things that have been, you know, developed. And then I meet regularly with the Elenco, which is really useful for me because that keeps me up to date with the children that have additional needs. And we know that this is, you know, as governors, when we're looking at how the school is developing, we know that this isn't a quick fix. You know, this is going to build up over years, and we can see over the last 2-3 years what a difference it's made to the children. And John and I spoke to some staff last week as part of Kath's performance management, and just hearing them talk, there's just such a consistent use of language. They were all singing from the same hymn sheet. They were all telling us the same things. And what was nice was they said that now, whereas before, if they had a child with challenging behaviour, they would deal with the behaviour. Whereas now they say they've got the knowledge and the training behind them so that they can actually look beyond the behaviour and actually deal with the causes of that. And they have a toolkit, and that toolkit is being used now by children, as Kath's just said, you know, so that they can regulate their own behaviour. So, I mean, you know, for us as governors, you know, it's a no-brainer. We support, you know, support the staff all the way. And we can really see the difference in how the children are learning, you know, and that's going to make a difference in the end in standards. So, which is what we're for and about. So,
thank you, Lynwen. Thank you. There was one other on the agenda that you asked me about the local authority, whether I'd address how the local authority have supported us as well. I have to say, I have felt totally supported by the local authority through lockdown, since lockdown. I cannot fault them. I'm not saying every decision that's been made straight away has been the right one. I know I've made the wrong decisions at times, but I have never, ever felt more supported. I've never felt like they were going to question me as to why I was doing something. And that was really important because none of us have been in this situation before. I've attended training. So one of the reasons that I've been so interested in wellbeing is some of the training courses I've been in, which have been arranged by the local authority, have been superb. The training for EAL pupils and that I've attended as well has been excellent. I put on the slide as well about the letters. I didn't realise the interim director was going to be here today when I put this PowerPoint together, but I genuinely, the letters that we've had from her that have gone out to parents, asking parents to support head teachers in a difficult time, have meant a huge amount to me, because it's very easy to stand and criticise a school or criticise a head for things that are going on, but we're all going through something that's completely new and completely different. And although you look back and think I would have made a decision differently, I pray that I never ever have to evaluate the way the last year has gone in order to improve it on the next time, because I genuinely pray I never have to have anything to do with a pandemic and be a head teacher through a pandemic again, because it's not something I ever want to go through again. The health and safety officer, the guidance that we've had from the local authority just to reopen the schools was superb, absolutely superb. Every avenue had been thought of, and just I know there was a task group of people who worked with it, which was representatives from all over the local authority, but it was absolutely superb. And the health and safety officer, my first positive COVID case came into school. I got the phone call at 10 to 9 on a Saturday night. So that was the end of my Saturday night, because I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't do anything, because it was quite early on in the whole thing as well. By 8 o'clock on the Sunday morning, I just got to the point where I thought I've got to tell someone. I don't know who to go to, but I'm going to go to someone. And I sent a text message to the health and safety officer, who obviously shouldn't have been working on the Sunday. And within half an hour, she was back on the phone to me. And from that second on, the support kicked in, and I was TTP, absolutely superb again, cannot fault them at all. Virtually took me by the hand through the whole issue that was coming, which was horrible, absolutely horrible. Isolating children is not a pleasant experience in any way, shape or form. I know why we're doing it, I understand that, but the repercussions on those families and the anxieties and everything else, and I felt like it was almost my fault as I was doing it the first few times. So I have to say, all I've had from the local authority, from my challenge advisor, the lead challenge advisor, is we're with you, we're behind you, we're backing you every step of the way. They recognise the fact that we're in the situation we are, and they are genuinely doing their absolute best to support us. So I can honestly say, I don't know if we ever, hopefully we never have to evaluate it in a way to improve on the next time, but genuinely, from my point of view, I couldn't have asked for more. And I think they do have head teachers' well-being in mind all the time, which is great, although in all honesty, how much anybody can do at the moment to improve or make the situation easier is very difficult. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope you've enjoyed it, if you've got any more questions or anything, and I hope it's what you were looking for as well. I'm sorry if it wasn't, but hopefully it was what you wanted to know about.
Great. Could I say thank you very much on behalf of the panel to both to yourself and your chair of governors and vice chair of governors. Really, you know, a lot of the things you were saying are really quite inspiring. So really well done. I'm sure there are going to be a few questions, and there's one hand up, two hands up at the moment. That's Linda Tyler Lloyd first, and then Miles Langston, and then Cyril Anderson. Linda.
Yes, hello. Let me just say that I'm blowing my own trumpet. It was my idea to come to the school because I was cast from males, and I also knew how well thought of she was by the headmaster, Damien Beach. And he said that this school would be, YWN would be the perfect school for her because of all her qualities. And I think it's just proved to us, it's been fascinating listening to her, and she's obviously in the right place with the right children. And well done, Kath. I knew that you would be marvellous, and thank you for this presentation this afternoon.
Thank you, Linda. That's so lovely of you to say. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Linda. Miles.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Lyndon's comments. Thank you very much for the presentation, and huge credit to you on the work you're doing in incredibly difficult circumstances. So thank you for the time, and thank you for taking us through that.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks.
It's Councillor Cyril Anderson and Councillor Jen Rayner. Cyril.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would like to thank the head teacher for all her hard work, and the Board of Governors. I think they have, in this time of COVID, they have come out of this reasonably well. I have got one question, is ALNs, are you having any problems with having children waiting for tests to be reassessed or assessments?
Yeah, it's massively long waiting lists. Yeah, huge waiting lists, and it puts massive pressure on families there. And I know it's across the board, it's everywhere, and that it's sort of when a child is in limbo, because what we try to do is, if we're pretty sure that a child is going to get a diagnosis of something, then we treat the child as if they have had that diagnosis anyway, and we go down that path. But obviously there's a lot of support that you can't access until you get that rubber stamp on it. But yeah, massive. It's difficult because you know we there's not enough resources out there is the problem for everybody, I know. But yes, we have massive. They go in. I think there's some waiting lists are just about 2 years. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And again, just one more, Lyndon. I'd like to thank Ellen and Jen for all their hard work in supporting our ed teachers and teachers all along.
Great, thanks. So Jen.
Thank you. And before I begin, it's just a question again from Michelle. There was an earlier piece of work done, I think Mary was actually the chair of that group, looking at CAM support and mental health. It's an opportunity to review that and see what is actually being delivered, because I know it's an area of stress. There's a big echo. Could people turn their mics off? Thank you. I think we've heard a remarkable story about what's been going on in a very challenged school. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when I visited last time, the school had a considerable number of asylum seeker family children there who have to survive on sums of money way below universal credit, have language skills that must be learnt, and often have very traumatized background as well. So this is a super challenged school across the board. But Catherine and her staff and her governing body are almost part of her senior leadership team, have actually addressed what needs to be done to make it possible for children to learn. And I think they have done a remarkable job. Peppered through the presentation was additional training during the summer holidays, which is all paying off. And I want to stress summer holidays because the great majority of our teaching staff have been working through summer holidays, and I have to grit my teeth and not be abusive when somebody says, oh, teachers get loads of holidays. They're not on holiday, they're flogging their guts out, improving their own skills for the benefit of our children. I think this has been really inspiring because we've heard how children can become more resilient, more open to learning, and this will stand us in good stead for the future. So I would like to pass on my thanks to the school, including the governing body, for the high support that they have put in for those children. And also, in a way, thank the school because, as has been said, the school was an early front runner, almost a guinea pig, for first receiving the news that there was a case of COVID relating to the school community and pupils would have to be sent home. And without realising it, probably that school played an enormous role in colouring how we responded to some later cases. I think you did a remarkable job sorting staff out, keeping the children safe, and again, communicating with parents who really didn't have some of the skills on language skills to understand exactly what was being asked for them. So a phenomenal report, and I think the whole school community has done wonders, and I think everyone, having watched your presentation, from the faces I could see, everyone was just nodding and in some places almost moved to tears at the involvement that you've put into this school. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much. That's really lovely. You just reminded me actually of that horrible weekend when I did have that, and I don't mean that in a bad way, when we did have that that notification, because we found out on a Sunday, and it was a case of, right, how do I let these parents know? I had 2 classes of children to isolate, and I didn't want to put it on social media because I thought I'm going to panic them. So yeah, I've got a lovely husband and a wonderful senior leadership team, and we all trooped into school and printed out the letters and hand delivered them to the children ourselves to make sure that they knew, and to try and say as well, look, it's okay, you know, it's okay. But it's a really difficult thing for any school to do. Unfortunately, I think we're starting to get used to it, which is not a good thing. But at the same time, it's a horrible situation, because there were then families who were saying to us, they were ringing and they're saying the mum was isolating with the children. She couldn't work. She didn't have any food because she didn't have any money. So it was food parcels again then, and finding people to go with food parcels. But it's the headline in the newspaper says so many children isolated. It's just a headline, isn't it? There's a story behind it as well. But thank you so much for your kind words. Really appreciated. And I have got a fantastic team around me. Thank you.
You're muted, Lyndon.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's Councillor Mary Jones next, and then Helen Morgan-Rees. Mary.
Oh, thank you. It's just actually to respond to Councillor Rayner. Yes, I did chair the CAMS inquiry we did, and it was very in-depth. She said we had, I think, 2 reviews because some of the work hadn't been done. But my understanding is now that I think it's Councillor King that has got responsibility for ensuring that the recommendations are being carried out. I don't think it would hurt this panel to look at recommendations to see if they can be used in any way. And I would like to thank the head and her staff and governors at YSGOL. I'm not on this actual board panel, but I found it, you know, really, really interesting and very informative. And congratulations on all the work that you've done. And when we go on to the next item, I've actually got something from one of your slides I'm going to ask a question on. So it has actually, you know, been extremely useful to me. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Mary. Helen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Just thank you from me, Kath, to you and your governors. Nice to see Lynwen again. And obviously, I'm really proud of YSGOL, what you achieve in normal times. Your staff go the extra mile because you've a challenging context. But certainly during COVID times, you've gone many, many extra miles. So thank you very much, Kath.
Okay, great. Thank you, Helen. Any other questions? No, well, can I also, you know, reiterate what everybody said? You know, really listening to what you had to say was truly inspirational, and really well done to you, the governing body, and the team at the school. So, and please, could you pass on our thanks to them for everything you're doing, and thank you very much, and for taking the time to come along and speak to the panel. Thank you very much. I think you're on mute, Catherine. Yeah.
Sorry, I nearly got it all right there. Thank you ever so much, and thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Linda. Thank you. I think it's when we bumped into each other in the park, didn't it, that we started talking. That was the trouble. Right. But yeah, thank you. Very, very grateful, and your words were absolutely lovely. I wasn't quite sure if I was telling you what you needed to know, so it's lovely. Thank you. Really grateful, and I will pass the thanks on to my lovely team.
Great. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the elective home education, and we have with us Helen Morgan-Rees, obviously the interim director of education, and Kate Phillips, head of the school support team, Achievement and Partnership Service. And we're going to talk about that. So we did, as I mentioned earlier, Councillor Mary Jones actually raised this at the Scrutiny conference, and we were obviously very pleased to invite her along to this, because it's something that we all think really important, and Mary obviously was very keen to raise it and make sure that we actually discussed it. So Helen, can I ask you to speak to it?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to take you through any slides. I've brought along Kate Phillips, Interim Head of Achievement and Partnership for that purpose. But just to give a brief introduction, this panel has received an update during the last 2 years on elective home education. And at that time, you met with 2 officers, one from the Home Tuition Service and one from the Education Welfare Officer Service. So Kate oversees the Educational Welfare Service. So she is absolutely in tune really with the recent updates, and she will take you through the effect COVID has had also on elective home education. So without further introduction, obviously Kate is here to speak to it. Just a few slides, not too many, and hopefully take questions, and I'll join her in taking questions afterwards. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Helen, and welcome, Kate. If you'd like to kick off. Hello.
Hi, sorry, apologies, I had my microphone switched off. Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation. I think I've got a tough act to follow, but I've got a short presentation just to talk you through. Can I just check, because I can't see the screen when presenting. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Thank you, that's super. Okay, so just to talk you through, first of all, the statutory context around elective home education. Education in Wales is compulsory, but attending school is not. So parents can choose to educate their children at home if they wish to. But the local authority needs to be satisfied that every child in their area is receiving a suitable education, and that's what's laid out in the Education Act. And what's included in this Act is that parents must provide their child with an efficient and suitable education, which often takes place in school, but not always. So the parent of every child of compulsory school age shall cause themselves to receive efficient full-time education suitable to their age, ability and aptitude, and to any special educational needs they may have, either by regular attendance at school or otherwise. And that's the statutory context. And in relation to that legislation, the local authority has a specific duty. It's not responsible for the provision of elective home education, EHE. However, we do have a duty to make arrangements to identify any children who are not receiving a suitable education. So we don't have a legal framework as such to monitor the provision of home education, but we are mindful of our wider duties of care in terms of where there may be occasions when children aren't receiving a suitable education, that we should be identifying that. There's one significant difference, which will be where children have additional learning needs and specifically a statement of special educational needs. So in that case, the local authority have a very clear role, and parents need to consider the request for elective home education, and we need to amend the statement accordingly. So that happens via a formal panel process. But other than where a child has got a statement of special educational need, a parent can put a request into the local education authority that their child's name is removed from a school roll, and they can then undertake elective home education in whichever way or format they consider to be appropriate for their child. And that's where we would refer back to education that's appropriate for the age and aptitude and ability. Where there's a statement of special educational need, the local authority still has a role in ensuring that the requirements of the statement are maintained, and so we would link more closely perhaps with those families. The position in Swansea is that we are aware at the moment of 234 families who are choosing to electively home educate their children. That figure does change quite frequently. And one of the things that we're very keen on is to make sure that we have an open door then to families, and that if they choose to return to a school provision for their children's education, that we would facilitate that for them. And equally, parents can make the choice to electively home educate at any point, and so that's why the numbers, there's an element of fluidity in the numbers. Our principles are also that we totally accept and respect the right of parents to choose elective home education, and in that respect we're mindful of our boundaries. And we do respect that it is a parental choice, and you know, something that we should honour should parents request it. So our process is really to work in a manner that supports elective home educating parents. We want to foster good relationships, keep lines of communication open, but we realise that that is a choice for parents, and so we endeavour to make sure that we can build those relationships with electively home educating parents. However, if they choose not to engage that, we completely respect it. When parents do request that their child's name is removed from a school roll, we try to identify the reasons why that might be, because it's quite helpful for us to understand. So some of the main reasons are ideological or perhaps a family lifestyle. Sometimes children who have ill health, emotional health and well-being needs that they feel perhaps are better met through an elective home education package can be a reason for deregistering. Cultural reasons, religious reasons. Sometimes children are expressing that they're very unhappy in school. Parents of children with additional learning needs sometimes choose to electively home educate because they want to offer something perhaps quite specific or bespoke that they may feel they can do better at home. Some children have anxieties, an element of perhaps nervousness or unease in the school environment. We have had examples of parents electively home educating when they're waiting for a place in the school of their choice. So we do tend to meet parental preference wherever possible, but sometimes where schools are at capacity and children have been refused a place, we have had examples of elective home education while they're waiting for a place to become available. Some parents like the flexibility, a tailoring of a very individualised approach. And sometimes, you know, children have not attended at school, and so parents make the decision that elective home education is more appropriate. Most recently, we've seen an increase in new requests for elective home education due to COVID. And what we've identified from this is that, you know, while some parents have enjoyed the experience of teaching their children at home, because there was a period during the lockdown when that was happening, some of them are also anxious about the school environment, and I'll touch on that a bit later on in terms of what we've done to support that. In terms of our local authority approach towards supporting and safeguarding children who are electively home educated generally, as I said, our focus really is on building positive relationships with the elective home educating community. So we have, with consent, a list of names and contact details, and you know, we will aim to keep in touch with families. It's very much on a consent basis. If people don't want us to do that, then obviously we wouldn't. We can offer signposting, advice and guidance. We have an elective home education team. It's part of the Education Welfare Service, so there's a level of expertise there in terms of guiding parents where they can get information perhaps on exam centres or resources and so on. What's really key for us is that a parent's decision to home educate should not in itself be grounds for concerns about the welfare or well-being of a child. That's absolutely not the case. However, as with any families, there may be circumstances that give rise to concerns, and then in those cases, the education officers, the welfare team specifically, will consider whether or not to liaise with other relevant services and agencies. And again, our approach is always a supportive one. School attendance orders can be used as a last resort if there's a concern that appropriate education is not being provided, but this is not something that we have done, certainly in recent years, because we much prefer an approach where we're working in partnership with home educators. And any pupil who's received their education at home can apply to be readmitted to a mainstream school at any time, and we would support that and do our absolute best to accommodate those requests. Just then to quickly highlight the response that we've made specifically in relation to COVID. As I've said earlier, we've seen an increase in the requests for parents to home educate their children. So some parents have identified, as I said, that they just enjoyed the experience when they were much more involved on a daily basis with their child's education during the period of national school closures, and they've chosen to continue. But others have been more fearful about children returning to school, particularly where there are family health concerns. So perhaps either the child has got some poor health, or there's health conditions in the family. We've taken a really supportive and reassuring approach to that, and we have offered, with every request that's highlighted that, to spend some time with the family, to liaise with the school and also with our health and safety officer, to outline the safeguards that schools have put in place to create environments that are as COVID secure as they possibly can be, and that's been successful in some cases in reassuring families, and they've decided that actually, you know, they would be willing for their children to continue in school, and we've looked at perhaps a more supportive approach in terms of attendance and allowing them to reintegrate and phase back into school slowly, because there's been quite a long period of absence over the national lockdown period. So you know, some families haven't felt willing to send their children back to school, but we're keeping in touch with those with their consent, and we will continue to do so and offer that reassurance. So really, it's just a much more flexible approach, delaying the removal from roll. We're not penalising for non-attendance at the moment, just providing as much reassurance on the risk assessments as we possibly can.
Great.
In terms, oh, sorry.
No, carry on. Sorry.
No, sorry. It's the last bit of information. So it's just intent to outline our future developments. There's new statutory guidance from Welsh Government, which is being consulted upon in October 2019, but it's currently on hold as COVID-19 responses took priority. So it's just really to let you know that we are prepared to take on any requirements of the statutory guidance if they're implemented. We're familiar with what they are, and we've got some ideas for how we would work within that. But the focus for us will be to continue to foster those good working relationships. And there is a very small amount of additional funding supported by Welsh Government to councils to support families who are electively home educating. So we're just considering at the moment how best to allocate that. And that is it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Really informative. Now then, I'm sure there are a few questions. And Councillor Mary Jones is the first one. Mary.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Kate and Ellen. I mean, you've actually, the reason I asked about it was one of your latter slides when it was the COVID and the 88 pupils that had gone up. But I have to make a reference back to the slides we saw about the ACEs, and I must admit, I hadn't really thought of it in this way. And I think on the last one, it said incarceration, 5%. It's quite worrying. And if we are aware of things, you know, like that, or how do we become aware of something like that? And the other one is, it was really only a safeguarding question in a way, and you have obviously addressed that, because I was extremely concerned that if we're having the children, they've been out of school for so long, they're not coming back for whatever reason, and as you said, they're valid reasons, they're afraid. Parents or grandparents are afraid to allow the children to come back, and how are we managing to get them back into school? But you've actually addressed it on the slide, so thank you very much. All the sort of concerns I had, you've actually answered them in the slides. So that was really on my question, really, about the incarceration, because I was actually quite taken aback with the 5%.
Great. Councillor Jen Rayner. Jen? You're on sign. There we are. Yeah.
Thank you. One of the issues that has still to be recommended, I think, from the Welsh Government is the position taken by the Children's Commissioner. And a few years ago, myself, Councillor Christine Richards, who had the Children's Social Services portfolio, and Councillor Mark Child, we and the Children's Commissioner were, and I'm still am, of the opinion that there has to be a register of children who are not attending school. Yeah. No value judgments attached, just it would be useful to know, because at the last hearing, which was quite stressful because I don't think arrangements had been set up on a let's stay friends basis, it was a bit more confrontational. I certainly had it, and so did Christine Richards, had an email from a parent who wanted to stay as a home educator. The issue was about paying for exam fees for her child, who she said had not been out of his room for 3 years. Now, we both escalated that. There was a conversation with the parent, and I do believe social services went and visited, but the 3 years took our breath away as to how and why and where and what. And then in conversation with the mother, the child was doing a lot of work online, sounded to be very on top of all the work. So she couldn't understand why we couldn't fund the exams, but as nobody knew anything, we didn't know what resilience the child had in case he failed. What would happen then? Great if he passed, but in any exam, it's a bit of a leap in the dark, no matter how much work. So as far as I know, one of the issues still outstanding is what is going to be the Welsh Government's recommendation on a register of home educated children. I don't know if you heard anything, an update, but that was certainly the position that 3 of us councillors who, with responsibility for children and children's education, submitted that information a couple of years back.
Great, thank you.
Do you want me to respond? Sorry, Chair.
No, you do that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that was part of the consultation, Councillor Rayner, and Welsh Government, was to have a central register of electively home educated children, and to make that a statutory responsibility of the local authority. I know there was a very high volume of responses to the consultation, and conclusions haven't been drawn yet. That process was put on hold by Welsh Government, I think, because of the COVID response. What I would say in Swansea is we do our best with the information that we have, and we've got quite robust processes, but we are also very mindful that it is a consent-based model. So, that's really our purpose in building those good relationships with the families who are choosing to electively home educate, so that we can work in partnership with them. But to answer your question, it is still out for consultation, and we haven't had any clarity yet as to what date that will be concluded.
Good. I think certainly that a register would be very important, really, as you rightly said, because at least you know where all the children are, and I think that is important, and so on. Any other questions? Helen has got a hand up. Helen Morgan-Rees.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to respond to that point, Welsh Government did share with the Association of Directors of Education in Wales some early feedback from parents around that very issue, and there was considerable pushback, to our surprise, really, against any kind of regulation and monitoring. We were quite surprised as directors across Wales, really, to hear about that.
Yeah, great, thanks. That's interesting. And any other questions? None at all. Kate, thank you very much for that presentation. That really was really useful, and actually said where we were with it all, and thanks to Helen and Jen for the contributions. So
thank you.
Because it was, as I say, it is an important issue, and it has changed since COVID. And obviously, as you mentioned, 88 more children have been home educated now since September, so really important. So thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the work plan, and which shows our next meeting is on the 17th of December. Michelle, do you need to come in there at all?
No, there's just the items down there. We've got the Swansea Skills Partnership, and we've invited a number of the partners to that. And you had an email from me recently, panel members, about the sort of issues you'd like them to cover or you'd like to have in the discussion. So if you can respond to those, and then we can send them on to the partnership. But that's it.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Well, could I concludes our meeting? Can I thank everybody for attending, and particular thanks to Michelle for putting it all together. So thank you very much. I would say have a safe journey home, but I hope you have a nice cup of tea afterwards. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, and thanks all.
Reporting off now.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.